The officer paused the recording, looked at me carefully, and said, "We're going to listen to this again." I have always believed that responsibility is something you grow into quietly. By the time I turned 68, most of my life was arranged around that idea. I had been a municipal engineer for more than 4 decades, the sort of job where nothing dramatic ever happens, but everything depends on details being correct. When roads hold and bridges last, no one notices. That suited me. My daughter, Melissa, used to joke that I trusted paperwork more than people. That wasn't true. I trusted people who respected systems. I trusted those who understood that rules exist not to punish, but to protect. When Melissa married Darren, I gave him that same trust. He worked in property management, spoke confidently, and understood contracts well enough to sound competent. He was polite, deferential even, and always careful to emphasize how much he valued family stability. My granddaughter, Sophie, was 6 when they married. Sophie was born profoundly deaf. From the moment she came into my life, I learned a different kind of patience. Communication with her was never rushed. It couldn't be. We signed slowly, deliberately. We wrote notes back and forth. She watched faces closely, noticing things others missed. Sophie didn't interrupt. She waited. She observed. That would matter later. For years, things appeared orderly. Melissa and Darren bought a house. Sophie grew. I visited every Sunday afternoon, always bringing the same lemon biscuits she liked. We would sit at the kitchen table, and she would tell me about school with careful, precise signs. Nothing felt wrong, until something small didn't feel right at all. It started with a missed response. I sent Sophie a short video message one Thursday evening, me signing slowly, asking if she was excited about the school excursion she'd told me about the week before. Normally, she replied within the hour. That night, nothing came. The next day, I received a message from Darren instead. He typed quickly, efficiently. "She's busy with homework. We're limiting screen time." It was reasonable, sensible even. Except Sophie's homework had never stopped her from replying before, and screen limits had never applied to messages from me. I noted it the way I always had, with no accusation, no confrontation, just a mental marker. A week later, Sophie canceled our Sunday visit. Darren said she had a cold. Another marker. Then I noticed she'd stopped bringing her tablet when I did see her. She kept it in her backpack, zipped closed. When I asked her about school, she answered correctly, but without her usual detail. Her eyes moved toward Darren before she finished each sentence. That, more than anything else, unsettled me. Children who feel safe do not check for permission before they speak. I didn't ask questions Darren could answer. Instead, I watched. Watching, when done properly, is not passive. It is active restraint. It requires you to accept discomfort without relieving it through confrontation. I noticed Sophie flinch slightly when Darren entered the room, not dramatically, just enough to register if you were paying attention. Her shoulders would tighten, then settle again. I noticed that she wore the same jumper every visit, even when the weather changed. When I asked casually if it was her favorite, she hesitated before nodding. I noticed that when Melissa spoke, she sounded tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix, the kind of tired that comes from negotiating peace instead of living it. Still, I said nothing. Accusations without proof don't protect children, they isolate them. I began documenting quietly. Dates, missed visits, changes in behavior, not interpretations, only facts. Engineers are trained to separate observation from conclusion. I relied on that training. On one visit, I saw Sophie subtly angle her body so Darren was never directly behind her. On another, I noticed she waited for him to leave the room before relaxing into her chair. None of this would have convinced anyone on its own. That was the point. Patterns convince, singular moments do not. One afternoon, while Melissa was in the kitchen, Sophie slipped a folded note into my hand. Her fingers brushed mine briefly, deliberate, controlled. Inside were 3 words written carefully. "Listen alone, please." I nodded, said nothing, and slipped the note into my wallet. The moment passed without drama. Darren returned. Conversation resumed. That evening, after dinner, my phone buzzed. A new message. Not a video, not text, a voice note from Sophie. It was 12 seconds. Sophie could not hear her own voice clearly. When she spoke, the sounds were soft, imprecise. But I understood her speech patterns well enough. She spoke slowly, carefully. "Grandpa, if you get this, don't reply, just listen." There was a pause, a shuffle, then her voice again, quieter. "He said not to tell, but you always said rules keep people safe." The message ended abruptly. I listened 3 times. I did not reply. I did not call Melissa. I did not go to the house. I did not send Darren a message. Instead, I reviewed my notes again, this time asking a different question. Not what I feared, but what could be proven. Fear is personal. Proof is institutional. I considered my options carefully. Schools act on patterns. Doctors act on symptoms. Police act on evidence and jurisdiction. Each requires a different threshold. The voice note crossed one. It wasn't what Sophie said alone. It was how she said it, the timing, the instruction not to reply, the reference to rules keeping people safe. Those were learned phrases. I contacted the local police non-emergency line and asked a very specific question. "I have a recorded message from a minor. She is deaf. I am concerned about coercion. Who should review this?" There was a pause on the line, then a measured response. "Bring the recording in and any contextual information you have." They asked me to come in the following morning. I brought my notebook, my dates, my observations, and Sophie's voice note. The officer assigned to us was calm, professional, and methodical. He did not rush me. He did not promise outcomes. He listened once. Then he replayed it. Then he paused the audio, looked at me carefully, and said, "We're going to listen to this again." On the second replay, he adjusted the audio levels slightly, isolating background noise. That was when the tapping became clearer, evenly spaced, intentional. The officer asked quietly, "Does she use a pacing tool when anxious?" "Yes," I said. "Her teacher uses one during exams." He nodded, making a note. Another officer entered, listened without comment, then asked about Sophie's daily routines, bedtimes, device access, supervision. They weren't reacting emotionally, they were building a timeline. The tapping was a signal, a coping mechanism. She was frightened. The police did not act immediately. They never do when things are real. Instead, they requested school attendance records, medical visits, audio comparisons from Sophie's speech therapist. They noted that the message had been sent at 11:47 p.m., a time inconsistent with Sophie's routine. A welfare check was conducted 2 days later. No confrontation, no raised voices, just procedure. They found Sophie sleeping in a converted basement room, damp, poorly ventilated, locked from the outside at night for safety. Melissa did not know. The police did not act immediately. They never do when things are real. Instead, they requested school attendance records, medical visits, audio comparisons from Sophie's speech therapist. They examined internet usage logs tied to the message timestamp. Everything aligned. A welfare check was conducted 2 days later. No confrontation, no raised voices, just procedure. They found Sophie sleeping in a converted basement room, damp, poorly ventilated, locked from the outside at night for safety. Melissa did not know. That detail mattered. Darren was removed from the home pending investigation. Melissa and Sophie stayed with me for 6 weeks. Those weeks were quiet, structured, predictable. Sophie slept through the night again. There was no dramatic courtroom scene, no shouting, just reports, assessments, orders. Darren lost his property management license within 3 months. Melissa filed for separation. Sophie returned to her school, her routine, her quiet confidence. Justice does not